All right, I think we better get started. So, welcome everybody to the open event for the data science and epidemiology, evolution and control of infectious diseases streams on the MRes biomedical research. As you probably heard us discussing, there's seems to be some trouble with people joining the Zoom, so we're expecting people to join throughout the call, but we are recording it, so anybody that misses things will be able to come back to it. So I'm just going to share my screen and the slides. So hopefully you can see the slides. Can you see them there? Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So we have a number of people on the call related to the teaching staff, and we also have some former students from both streams. The first few slides is to introduce ourselves. But before we do that, just an overview of what we're going to talk about. I'll give a quick introduction to Imperial and the MRes program. Then we'll have an overview of the data science stream from Dr. Joram Posma, who co-leads the stream with me. We'll have an overview of the epidemiology stream from Lucy and Isabel, who lead that stream, and then a bit of student perspective from Valentina and Lanre with help from Yuji. These are all students who took the course in previous years. And then we'll move on to a question and answer session where you can answer, we'll try and answer any questions that you've asked. Okay, so brief introductions. This is me. I'm a professor of biomedical data science, and I do lots of different things, mainly to do with molecular high throughput profiling data, in particular metabolomics. If you have heard of that, you'll know it's to do with small molecules and profiling them in lots of different biofluids to find things like disease biomarkers and follow the trends and the progress of disease and try and understand mechanisms. Moving straight on to Joram. Are you with us, Joram, yet? Because I think...
Yeah, so I'm Joram Posma. I'm a senior lecturer in biomedical informatics. So a lot of my work deals with putting different types of data together and finding new ways or better ways to visualize them as well. So this ranges from molecular data to genetic data to clinical imaging data and also text data.
Okay, thanks, Joram. And moving on to Valentina, who's one of our previous students. Valentina?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Valentina. I was a student in the data science stream a couple of years ago. So this is just a brief introduction of my background. I have undergraduate in bioinformatics, and then I did this master, and after that I worked as a research assistant in machine learning and computational neuroscience, and now I'm a PhD student in AI at Imperial.
Great. Thanks, Valentina. And Yuji, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Yuji. So at the beginning, I studied finance, accounting, and management, and then I got my first master's degree in applied analytics in Columbia University. And MRes Biomedical Research Data Science stream is my second master's degree, and now I am doing a NIHR pre-doctoral fellowship in Oxford Vaccine Group as a medical statistician. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Yuji. And Lucy.
Hi, everyone. I'm a senior lecturer in infectious disease epidemiology. I focus on malaria, so that involves working with other academic groups, clinicians, public health agencies as well, and that's internationally and in malaria endemic countries. And we try to sort of better understand the burden of malarial disease and also how to control it. So some examples of recent projects are translating the impact of interventions seen in clinical trials to broader impact across different epidemiological settings, and then simulating strategies for controlling drug resistance and seasonal malaria. Thanks.
Okay, and Isabel?
Hi, everyone. I'm a lecturer in infectious disease epidemiology. My work focuses mostly on polio, so in collaboration with the WHO, CDC, and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, I use a mixture of statistical and mathematical models to understand, routinely collect surveillance data and estimate the impact of different interventions. In the past, I've worked on a rather variety of infectious diseases, including Ebola and various neglected tropical diseases.
Brilliant. And finally, Lanre.
Thank you. So my name is Lanre. So I have a medical background. I also have a master's degree in control of infectious disease from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. I did the MRes, the EECID stream in 2019 and started my PhD right afterwards. So I'm in the final year of my PhD, still at Imperial now. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So we'll move quickly on to a brief introduction to Imperial and the MRes program in general before we go into a description of the individual streams. So what's Imperial? Imperial College London is one of London's big universities. It's the only university in the UK to focus specifically on science, technology, medicine, and business. It's often considered the UK's most international university, and you'll see some statistics for that in a moment. We're very highly ranked in the world, if you believe in things like rankings, so 3rd in Europe, in the top 10 in the world, for both overall and especially for clinical and biomedical research. We have about 20,000 students and about 8,000 staff, and you can see that they derive from a very large number of countries, over 125. About 8,000 of our students are postgraduates, and about half of those are doing master's degrees. So we award many, many thousands of degrees a year, including many PhDs. And we spend a lot on research, over £500 million and over £250 million on medical research each year. And our course, the MRes, is very well thought of, and there's a very high relationship between applicants to places, so a ratio of about 5 to 1. And this is where we are, some pictures. This is the South Kensington site in London, in the centre of London, with the Hyde Park behind it, a few pictures from the campus here. We also have a number of other campuses, St Mary's, where Sir Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin about 100 years ago, and Hammersmith Hospital, which is where the central part of the master's degree is based. What do we want to do with this course? Well, we want to develop a future generation of leaders in biomedical research worldwide. And we aim to do that through providing a really good background in the course. We integrate lots of different multidisciplinary areas, so chemistry, biology, and computational aspects. It's a very investigative approach that we emphasize because you're actually doing research the whole time. And of course, there's a lot of emphasis on detailed theoretical and practical knowledge. The MRes is an MRes, and if you're not sure what that is, it's a Masters of Research. So I thought I would just explain what that is. You might be more familiar with an MSc, a Masters of Science, and that usually is a year's study where a large chunk of it is lectures, tutorials, practicals with exams for assessment. And then you usually do a 3 to 6 month project at the end of that. However, an MRes is much more emphasized towards the research. So you spend a much larger chunk of your time doing research with perhaps a few lectures and exams comprising a smaller amount of the degree. Our MRes is structured like this. So you spend your entire year doing research projects, and you do have some lectures, tutorials, journal clubs, etc., that occur throughout the year. So it's structured slightly differently to some of the other programs you might have seen. So this is what you would be doing if you came on the degree. You'd start in October with a short induction period. That's where you choose your projects that you're going to be doing. And then the first 6 months of the degree are all about project 1. That's assessed at the end with a thesis and an oral exam. In the second part, you do your second project, so it's nicely balanced like that. And again, you're assessed by a thesis and an oral exam. But you also have training and an exam on grant writing at the beginning of that second period. And at the end of the year, there's a final viva to finish everything up. The MRes, as I mentioned before, is split up into a number of different pathways, and we call those streams. There's actually 8 on our degree program, and each one focuses on a different area, a different subjects area. And the subjects, they all have common teaching, and they all have teaching which is specific to their own area. But you can see that here today, we're focusing on these two, the data science stream and the epidemiology, evolution, and control of infectious disease stream. So each stream has its own set of students and its own set of projects which are specific to that area. If you're interested in doing research after the master's degree, We have quite good statistics on that. I can just draw your attention to this orange line here, which is the proportion of students who obtained an offer for their PhD while they were actually in the MRes year. So that's around about 50% or something like that. So it's really good statistics on getting students into PhDs. And since the course has been started in 2005, we've trained nearly 1,000 students. Probably about half of those have gone on to do PhDs. But it's not all about academic life, of course. There's plenty of clubs and societies at Imperial, so we would recommend that both doing put a lot of effort into your research time, but also finding some interesting things to do outside of academia. Okay, so I'll move straight on to Yoram, who's going to give an overview of the data science stream.
Thank you very much, Tim. So just progress to the next slide, I think. So what the program of the MRes alongside those two projects that Tim mentioned is we have some weekly lectures. Usually they're between 10 and 12 on Wednesdays. So most of them are going to be face-to-face. There would be the occasional one via Teams or another way to do this. And on some Wednesdays, we will have something called the Biomedical Data Science Seminar Series, in which students are able to learn, and you're interacting with PhD students, with other students, with postdocs, with academics, talking about different topics in biomedical research and specifically in data science around these things. As well as there's also journal clubs throughout the year. And as you can see, with these different ways, with the teaching, with the seminar series, and with the journal club, you get exposed to a lot more than just what you learned during your two projects. So in terms of teaching, and Tim showed this already, is throughout the year, we will have, next slide, we'll have different types of training that you'll get. So some of them are going to be in the beginning of the year, some of them are going to be more towards the end, and you'll learn about a whole range of different topics. Quite a few of these are together with some tutorial as well, where you can learn a bit of coding for that specific topic. Specifically useful if you don't encounter all of these things in all of your projects, which is generally not happening. So the second part is where you can learn about more topics than just those two in your project. This next slide, please, is on the Biomedical Data Science Seminar Series. So these are section meetings that Tim has a section of bioinformatics in our department, and we'll invite people from within the section, from within other departments as Imperial, and also outside Imperial to come talk to us about their recent work, about something that they have done as well. So usually between 20 and 50 people attend these as well, and they come up from all of the ranges, from BSc students to senior academics, they come along. So on the next slide, you'll see some of the examples what we've had in the past year. So we've had people from outside Imperial, from both within academia, as well as from industry, postdocs, to lecturers, to different people talking about a range of different topics. So you are able to get exposed to different topics. So next slide will show you something that we'll have on in 2 days' time. So that's the first one, and all of you that are here today, you're welcome to join. You can join in person, you can also join online. We have two former students from the data science stream, and they're coming to talk to us about their experience of moving into industry after. So both of them have different data science roles in two large companies, IBM and Marks & Spencer. And if you want a bit more information, if you Google Imperial BDS3 on any search engine, I say Google, but it can be Bing, can be anything else, you'll be able to pick up that link and know how to join. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, some journal clubs. So from this year, we get students to pick their own journal club articles. So we're discussing some research. We're going to go down to it. We're going to sort of critically assess it and talk about what we've learned and what really the output of those papers is. So you have some examples here about how sort of diverse these things are. And you can pick something that really interests you beyond your project as well. So on the next couple of slides, you will see some student projects that we've had over the past year. So you can get a general sense of what students have done as well. So on the next slide, you'll see something that Mikey Wang, who was on our course, I think 2 years ago, thought about something that she's proud of. And she talked about a specific result that surpassed human performance as well in natural language processing. And this actually was written up as a paper that's currently under review. On the next page is one of our former students, Andy Cow, who's working on imaging data from animal models as well. So completely different to text. We're looking at imaging data. We're trying to segment different parts of fruit flies as well, and looking at how that goes over time in terms of the reproductive system. On the next slide, again, something different, where we look at clinical health records of data. So electronic health records of patients, genetic data as well, and trying to see, okay, what are the similarities between two different types of groups of people. And the last example I have for you is some sort of single cell RNA sequencing data, where we're using machine learning methods to visualize differences between these groups. So these data are multidimensional. How can we do that in a smarter way? This was actually the second project of Caitlin that is in 2 days coming to talk to us about. So you have a bit of an idea what students have done before and what type of careers they might lead up to as well. So I'll hand over to Isabel and Lucy now.
Sure. So I'll give an overview of the epidemiology, evolution, and control of infectious diseases stream with Lucy. So next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So if you choose this stream, you'll be supervised by researchers who are within the MRC Centre for Global Infectious Disease Analysis, which is in the School of Public Health. And the department is split into 4 research themes. We have research on preparedness and response to emerging threats, which I'm sure all of you will be familiar with COVID-19, and our department had a great role in responding to the pandemic and continually work on preparing for emerging threats. We have work on global health analytics, so understanding the burden of different infectious diseases and estimating the impact of different interventions. We have work on analysing vaccines through different clinical development pipeline from different phase clinical controls through to real-world effectiveness, and we have work on pathogen genomic epidemiology. So there's a huge amount of infectious disease genetic data becoming available, and how can we learn on the epidemiology of these pathogens. And all of this work covers a wide variety of infectious diseases, which are listed on the right. So there's a huge wealth of projects that you could choose from. If you're interested in this stream, I recommend you to look at these 2 links at the bottom of the page. The first one gives an overview of the different work in the department, and the second one has some science and context videos where researchers give a quick 2-minute summary of some of the work that they're doing. Next slide, please. So as well as you're doing your 2 research projects, you also receive core teaching on Wednesdays. And these are some of the topics that you'll be covering. So it's a range of lectures with developing technical skills with our programming language, and learning different topics of infectious disease modeling and statistical analysis, as well as population genetics and phylogenomics, pathogen evolution, and spatial epidemiology. And then we also have some sections on disease, so some lectures on some disease-specific areas as well. Next slide, I'll pass over to Lucy now.
Thanks. So I'm just going to talk you, as Yoram did, through a few example epidemiology projects to give you a flavour of what has been done. So, of course, a lot of projects have focused on COVID-19 in recent years. This is one project where Nieves used Bayesian statistics to estimate the impact of COVID-19 vaccination in the UK during 2021, looking at case data over time and fitting models to that. Next slide, please. Another example of a dynamic transmission model, this time using individual-based modelling, where each human is tracked individually using R software. This looked at a kind of novel problem for malaria, which is evolution of resistance to diagnostics. So not to drugs for once, but it actually makes it quite hard to detect the pathogen. And Oliver, who did this project, has since gone on to develop risk maps for WHO to identify where we should be doing surveillance for this. Next slide, please.
Oh. Okay.
Finally, we don't only do infectious disease modelling, we also do a lot of statistical analysis in this area. This is an example of a more statistical project looking at links between HIV and hypertension. And Catherine Davis here did some survival analysis on cohort data and showed that there was not, in fact, an association between HIV treatment and hypertension the data she was able to find, but did find gender differences in seeking care. Next slide, please. In terms of how students fit into the department, we're very keen for MRes students to integrate as much as possible. So students are allocated desks within the department, and there are communal kitchens and lunch spaces where students are encouraged to come and meet PhD students and postdocs. And we often find that that is really helpful for the MRes students because you can informally get quite a bit of help. Yes, we like data science. We also have research seminars. So on Tuesdays, we have external speakers, people coming in from outside, and there's a department social afterwards. And then on Thursdays, we have internal seminars, usually from PhD students or postdoctoral researchers. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Lucy, and everybody. So now we're moving on to perspectives from our previous students. So I think first it's Lanre.
Thank you. So I, just as we mentioned, I had two research projects. My first was looking at viral load data, sort of identifying biases using different sources of data, so clinical sources and laboratory sources as well. And I would just have to mention at the start of my MRes, I was completely new to R, so I had never used R before. And so I had a chance to learn that on my very first project, which was more focused on statistical modeling. And so this is just one picture I'm very proud of from the first project. So at the end of the first project, you do a poster presentation where you're assessed on, and it was my first chance to create a poster, and I've done a lot more on my PhD. Next slide, please. And so this is my second project, which was now more modeling focused. So this project was trying to address a question which WHO was trying to address at the time point. So finding what indicators best sort of predict elimination of hepatitis B virus. And so I got to learn mathematical modeling where I worked with Tim Haled, Shivanti Nayagam, and we simulated a mathematical model of hepatitis B virus transmission to identify what indicators could confirm reaching 90% reduction in incidence. Next slide, please. And so after the PhD, I started my, after the MRes, I started my PhD right afterwards. And so I'm co-supervised by my first MRes project supervisor. So he's now my PhD supervisor alongside Lucy as well, who's on the call. And I also have a co-supervisor from University of Cardiff. And so my PhD looks at determinants of HIV treatment success amongst adolescents living with HIV. And there's also a modeling component where I'm also trying to quantify the contribution to transmission depending on what your viral load level is. I would have to say like the MRes has been extremely critical because it sort of helped me to hit the ground running on my PhD. I picked up a lot of skills on data analysis, visualization, modeling, programming, which has been extremely useful. Thanks.
Thanks, Lanre. So moving straight on to Valentina.
Yes, hi everyone. So as I mentioned before, I also did two projects during my MRes here that were quite different. So in the first project, I was actually working with images, whole slide images, and I was trying to build like a pipeline algorithm that essentially could predict where the cancer was located in the tissue. And that was particularly rewarding for me because it was very nice to see that even if you don't tell the algorithm where cancer is, the algorithm will learn it on its own, and it was quite accurate at doing it. And during this project, I learned a lot about like deep learning, and I've not really done a project on deep learning before, so I could code, but I've not really like worked on deep learning so much. So that was like a first, good first introduction. In next slide. In my second project, instead, I worked on neuroscience. So I don't have a background in neuroscience, but I always wanted to do a PhD in neuroscience. Well, always, it's something I realized throughout time. And this second project gave me the opportunity to actually do a project in neuroscience. And in this case, I was working with like MRI images, and I was trying to predict the Alzheimer progression. So I was trying to find biomarkers or specific regions in the brain that if they are like maybe affected or like they are affected by neurodegeneration, then can be helped to predict whether a person will develop Alzheimer in like 1 year, 2 years, or so on. So this project was slightly different in the sense that I could use completely new type of data that I've never seen before, and also new type of like algorithm, and also it was like in neuroscience, which is something I've not worked on before. So next slide. So what did I do after the MRes? I worked as a research assistant actually in the lab of my second supervisor. During the master, I actually got a couple of PhD offer, but they were not really in the field I was interested in. So I decided to work as a research assistant in the lab of my second supervisor, where I worked even more on neuroscience, machine learning. And then after that, I started a PhD. My PhD is always at Imperial, and one of my supervisor is the same one with whom I did my second MRes project a few years ago. But then I also have like a second supervisor from Harvard, so I work a bit of at the intersection of multiple labs, which is quite nice. In my PhD project, I still work on neuroscience, but it's much more focused on AI. And I work with different type of data, being imaging, cognitive, and single cell, and so on. So why, if I can say something about the MRes, I think if I wouldn't have done the MRes, I don't think I would be here doing this PhD at the moment. It did allow me to learn a lot of the skills that I find like very necessary while I'm doing the PhD. Not only like technical, so like deep learning or like whatever it is, but also very soft skills. Like you learn how to make a poster, how to write a grant, all skills that you actually really need later on. And also one thing that I think it's very relevant that I don't think a lot of people think about, it allowed me to do a project in a field in which I didn't have a background, because I really wanted to work on neuroscience, but I didn't have a neuroscience background, and it's very difficult to start a PhD in a field in which you don't have a background. But in the MRes, you have the opportunity to do a project where you're completely new, you don't really have an experience, and then gain the experience you need to maybe move forward in a slightly different like field always in research. So that's something that it made it possible for me to then do a PhD in AI and neuroscience. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both, Lanre and Valentina. And just to say, we do have another data science student, Yuji, with us. But in the interest of time, I don't think. Oh, no, we do have some slides. Sorry, Yuji. I thought there weren't any. Go ahead.
No worries. No worries. Thank you. My first project is the integrative analysis of multidimensional molecular data to understand the biological pathway of the idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So I basically, I actually have very little background in biology. So this is the first time that I actually use the data of multi-omics data to understand the mechanism of the disease. So it's very, at the beginning, I find it hard, but my supervisors are really supportive and the stream leaders are really supportive, give me a lot of guidance. So this is a very exciting experience for me. And my second project is to understand the impact of 2 extreme diets on gut microbial metabolites in the people at risk of CVD. This is where I actually use the data, the first-hand data of the clinical trial to clinical trial. And I was able to present my findings at a student conference. So now both of my projects is try to put up together for the publication. And so I think it is a very unique experience for me to prepare myself in the research skills and the research area that I am interested in my future PhD application, and also very helpful for my current experience in the NIHR pre-doctoral fellowship in Oxford Vaccine Group. So I'm trying to figure out a way to involve the biomarkers in the early phase dose finding, early phase vaccine trials to find the right dose for the volunteers. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, Yuji. Okay, so now we can move on to the question and answer phase of the session. So we've had quite a lot of questions submitted in advance, and we have a nice spreadsheet of those, and I see that there are some messages in the chat, and it sounds like some of those are being answered as we go along. So I think what we'll do is go straight to our list of questions, which I've got on the screen here because I know that some of the staff and former students wouldn't be able to see them otherwise either. So I think we can just go through them one by one. Some of them can be answered together. And please do stop me. Somebody will have to shout out because I'm not able to see the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So you'll have to use the microphone, unfortunately. So please do stop me if there's anything that we need to focus on. And I'll pass these around to the various people from different streams as necessary. So at the top of the list, you can see we've got some questions around eligibility on the admissions side. So if we start with the top one, which is how can students who don't have full-time work experience or a master's degree to be a competitive candidate? I think the short answer there is that you don't have to have a master's degree. This is a master's course, so we expect people to be applying with just a bachelor's degree, typically. And obviously, any work experience in the relevant area will be taken into account. Okay, so Master of Data Science, is a Bachelor of Nutrition eligible for this? Yes, but what we do look for with the data science stream is some evidence that obviously you're interested in data science, and particularly some evidence that you have some coding skills. That's one of the most important things to be able to do data science is coding. So if you have learned that through your degree, whatever subject your degree is in, or if you've done some coding in other areas, then please do emphasize that on your application. Now, the next one, I believe, is a question about the epidemiology stream, even though it says MSc in epidemiology. And it says, is a degree in politics and international relationships, international relations, and a bit of experience in healthcare. Is that enough to apply? So perhaps Lucy or Isabel would like to respond to that one.
Yeah, sure. So just to clarify, we have two courses. So we have the MRes in epidemiology, which is the Masters in Research. We also have a separate MSc in epidemiology, which is not a research master's, that is a taught master's. So you would be spending every day going to lectures and practicals. So that is a very different option. So you would spend much less time doing research apart from at the end of that course, which is a 3-month research project. In terms of this degree background, yes, I think it's not necessarily a yes or a no, but we do interview all our candidates, and I think as Tim said, we would want to see that you had some experience perhaps with data analysis or coding. As Lanre said, you don't have to have lots of experience in R coding, for example, because you can learn it on the course, but I think if you've never done any, it might be hard for you to assess whether you're going to enjoy the course. So we would probably just want to make sure it was definitely a good match. Yes.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So moving straight on, because I know we've got quite a few questions, about 50 in the list, I think. So the question here is, how much does research experience weigh when selecting applicants, and also the qualification of a referee to the chosen field? So I think the short answer again is that yes, we do place a weight on any research experience you have. So if you have undergraduate research projects, or if you have internships perhaps that you spent in research labs or groups, then we do weight that. So try to get as much of that as possible. And in terms of referees, yes, we do like to have academic referees that have a knowledge of your research experience. So if you have somebody who supervised your undergraduate research projects, or an internship that you may have done in a summer holiday, for instance, especially if it's been in a research role, then we really, really would like to hear from them. It's much more useful to have that kind of referee than to have a personal tutor, for instance, who only really knows you in a pastoral way. Although, we do read all the references. So if you can't find a research relevant referee, then and that's fine. Okay, so moving on again, as an international student, what are the prerequisites and procedure to join the course? I think, again, very quickly, we look for the equivalent standard to a British 2-1 undergraduate degree, bachelor's degree. And if you go to the Imperial website, the admissions pages, you'll be able to find to some extent the equivalent degrees from around the world. But of course, there's so many different options from different countries around the world. We have to take advice from our own internal departments as to which ones are equivalent. And in terms of procedures, it's the same procedure as applying as a home student. You apply online, and then you will have to provide evidence of your undergraduate degree, etc., and also your English language ability. Right, here's one for data science. Somebody says there are data scientists in the NHS with an interest in the course. Yoram, do you fancy taking that one?
So 100%, we'd be very interested in that, because there's quite a few projects each year that focus on NHS data as well. So this can go from electronic health records also to other types of trust data through supervisors as well. So if this is something that you're interested in, you want to develop more and get a bit more hands-on experience with different types of data, I would really encourage you to apply, because it does seem very relevant as well. The next one as well is sort of a biomedical scientist mass spectrometry background and looking at data science applications to these fields. Again, this is very relevant. A lot of our data do come from assays such as mass spectrometry and other aspects. And quite important for that as well is, just as Tim mentioned before, to just quickly highlight sort of the experience with data science as well. So as you can imagine, if you start right at the beginning in a project, and you can, like Lanre mentioned, sort of pick up coding as you go along, but it will help if you have some understanding or some background of it before you start.
Great. So the next question is application requirements on tips on making an application outstanding. I think the application requirements are pretty standard, as I say, 2-1 degree British equivalent. And if you're an overseas student or you haven't done your first degree in an English language, then we do require an English language test result. In terms of making applications outstanding, my view would be, please emphasize your excitement, your enthusiasm, your interest in the subject area, and also emphasize your actual concrete experience that you have in research. So as I said before, that might be internships, it might be undergraduate research project. Why did you enjoy it? What did you learn? How has that put you on the path towards this degree? I don't know if any of the other staff or students would like to comment on what makes an application outstanding. Anything, especially the staff who act as admissions tutors, anything you'd like to add?
I think perhaps just to say that you've really thought about the course, you've looked up what it involves, you've maybe looked up some of the supervisors, what they work on, so that you're really sure that you're a good fit for the course and that you're going to enjoy it. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. Yes. Okay. Let's move on. The next one is, it says entry level, and I presume that means application academic level. So I think we've covered that before. So if we move again, somebody has a clinical nutrition BSc and is now completing a data science degree apprenticeship. Would they still be eligible? Short answer is yes, I think, because if you've got an undergraduate degree and you've got relevant experience, you definitely meet the eligibility requirements. So the next one would be, is this course open to students with a medical laboratory science background? Now, maybe we can answer this separately for data science and for EECID. So certainly for data science, yes, in theory, you would be open, but as I say, we would be looking for some data science interest and some coding experience, especially. I don't know about EECID, Isabel or Lucy?
Sure, it depends on your interest in epidemiology and infectious diseases, and whether you can show you have an interest in doing quantitative analysis as well.
That's right. Okay, let's move on. If somebody's a practicing physician assistant with background in medical laboratory science, how easy and relevant is this? So that sounds similar to the previous one, I think. It's really about proving, if as long as you have an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's at the right level, and you can show concretely that you're interested in the subject, and especially in doing research in the subject, that is really what we're looking for. Okay, let's move on to admissions process. These are more sort of procedural types of things. There is an application fee, as with all Imperial Masters courses, and we believe that's currently set at £80. So you have to pay to actually submit an application, whether you get an offer or not. I'll just briefly go through these because I think some of these are answered very quickly. So the deadline for application, we don't have an official deadline, but we make offers throughout the year. We do usually close the course to new applications at the beginning of August. But I think the best thing to be said is that if you apply earlier, you are more likely to get an offer, because we do fill up, the various streams fill up at different points, but we fill up during the year. So earlier application, but absolutely by the end of July. Next one is, what time can we know the update of master's application? Okay, so again, briefly, the college passes on the applications to us, and we usually try to respond to those within about 6 weeks. However, I know that there have been some hiccups with Imperial's application system in the last few weeks. It's a new system, and they're having trouble getting the applications actually to us to make decisions on them. So there probably will be a bit longer delay than normal at the moment. So if you've applied in the last, say, 3 or 4 weeks, I would suggest that you wait at least until after Christmas for our response. The next question is, how can I apply? Short answer is, you press the application button or the apply button on Imperial's online system. It's very straightforward. All right, so let's move on to scholarships and funding. So quite a few questions in this area. How do I gain access to, I think this is a doctorate in public health in the institution, and that's not really what this open event is about, but perhaps, I don't know if Lucy or Isabel have anything to say about doctorates in public health.
Yes, so we do have a funding possibility open at the moment. It's on our website. It's called, if you look up a PhD in infectious disease epidemiology, which I guess encompasses the public health, then you'll find it at Imperial. So it's closing, I think it's 8th of January. So we do, yeah, they're very competitive, but we do have every now and again some scholarship funding for PhDs.
Right. Okay. And I would say that there are funding for PhDs in other areas as well, related to the broad biomedical research area covered by the whole MRes. The next question is there a scholarship? So again, we've sort of covered that with people going into PhDs, but there are a variety of different scholarships you can get for master's study at Imperial. If you go to the Imperial website and you search for the for the scholarships search tool, or just Google Imperial College scholarships postgraduate, you'll find a lot of resources relating to both Imperial funded scholarships, so those are the ones funded in sort of by the university itself, but also externally funded scholarships, so you can get money from elsewhere to come and do a master's here. However, I should say at the outset that most of these scholarships are targeted at home students. So apologies, international students, it is a lot more difficult for you to find scholarships. However, we do have some international students on scholarships, either from their own country or possibly some international scholarships that are available from the UK. And I think that covers the same question that the next one there as well. Somebody says, what are the chances of a scholarship? Again, I think the short answer is, as Lucy said, they are extremely competitive. So it's always worth applying, but there is a great competition for them, and there's not enough to go around, unfortunately. All right, so what about program delivery? So this is somebody who's interested in the epidemiology program, but they live in the US and they want to know how they can apply and how is the online classes. So just before I ask Lucy and Isabel, I would say at the outset, this is not an online program. The MRes Biomedical Research is a face-to-face program. You have to be in London to complete the program. But Lucy or Isabel, I don't know if you had anything else to add there.
Yes, as Tim says, it's not an online course. There are online courses which are separate, I think, which answers perhaps the next question as well. We do have a global Masters in Public Health, which is entirely online. I can put the link to that in the chat, but yeah, if you search for Global MPH Imperial, you'll also see that one.
That's right. So there are a few online courses offered by Imperial, but the vast majority of the master's programs are face-to-face. And in fact, that Global Master in Public Health is one of the few ones that is online. Okay, next question is this course accredited? Short answer is no. The main reasoning behind that is because we cover such a broad area that it's actually quite hard to find the right body to accredit the course. So we are not currently accredited by any professional body. Again, Lucy, Isabel, Yoram, anything to add there in terms of relationship to professional bodies? Okay. I think certainly in data science, you know, there are various bodies one could consider for accreditation, but they don't relate specifically to biomedical research applications. All right. The next question is, what is the MRes in biomedical research? I'm really hoping that the slides we gave to you earlier on have covered that, so I'm going to pass straight over. Next one is there research collaboration or PhD studentship? And again, I think we've kind of answered that. It's all about research on the program itself. And yes, there are PhD studentships that are offered every year, not specifically to MRes students, but many of our MRes students do progress onto those. The next one is part-time possible while somebody continues to work at UK HSA? So as director of the program, I can answer that one. Unfortunately not, because this is research, you have to be doing it full time. And especially for people doing laboratory-based research, there's no way of doing that part-time. So the whole program is full-time, I'm afraid, and there's no part-time option. It takes one full calendar year. The next question is, it just says CRM. I think that might be related to data science for customer relationship management. That's my guess anyway. Yoram, I don't know if you want to comment on whether the skills you learn on this course might be useful for that.
In general, so if you work with data, you will be able to learn in the data science stream many different machine learning methods. And as you've seen, some of our students have gone on to completely non-biomedical industry roles as well. So I put some things in the chat where some students have gone to Bayer or to AstraZeneca. So these have a clear relationship to biomedicine, but others have also gone to other industries, including, for example, Marks and Spencer. This has nothing to do with biomedicine, except for the fact that it is food, and what they're looking at is creating algorithms to model these things. So in general, if it is that, what was it, customer relationship management, if there is some data with it that you could think using machine learning, you will be able to model and do, you will get some general skills that you obtain during your projects, during the teaching session, that you can apply to new data.
Great, thank you. Right, so moving straight on, and by the way, students or applicants are on the call. We do have our alumni here who completed the course already. So if you have any specific questions for them, please do put that in the chat, and perhaps somebody can stop me if we need to look at those. So moving on, what's the difference between an MRes and an MSc in biomedical research? I think we covered that in the slides. Essentially, an MSc has a lot more lecture type material and more exams, whereas the MRes is examined purely based on a research thesis and oral presentations. There's no exams in the MRes. When do we start? The first day of term will be Monday, the 30th of September 2024. So that's easy to explain. Course design and structure, I think we've covered that in the earlier presentations. So it's 2 research projects, 6 months each, plus a grant writing exercise, which runs during the first 2 months of the second project. Somebody says here, they're a medical doctor interested in epidemiology, and they'd like to know more about the epidemiology disciplines. So again, one for Lucy and Isabel, I think. I don't know if this is a specific question about the types of epidemiology that are covered, or whether it's more about the appropriateness of somebody with a medical training coming in.
I think I can try to go
Yes,
at
right, yeah.
because I have a medical background. So I think the EACID stream is extremely relevant for someone who has medical background. So I was a doctor working in HIV, but then I had that interest in sort of understanding like a lot of the HIV data, what sort of informs increasing incidence. And I think I sort of made that clear in my application. So if you do have a medical background, but then you do have interest in sort of understanding spread of disease, and not just at the individual patient level, there is scope for you on the ECID MRes. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lanray. It's good to have somebody who's got the exact background to answer that one. Okay, so moving on, I know we've got lots more questions. We've only got 5 minutes left. The next one says, what field is ICL now focusing on? I think that's a bit of a general question. Even within the Faculty of Medicine, we have about 400 or 500 different research groups, all focusing on different areas. I don't know, just to take one, we have a Dementia Research Institute, for instance, which is focusing on neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, for instance. So a lot of projects are involved in that, but there is a huge variety of other things. So all the way from cancer to diabetes to other kinds of disease, but also a lot of methodological research. So we've been talking about the epidemiology and disease modeling kind of statistical research. We also do a lot of bioinformatics, and on the data science stream, obviously machine learning and applying that to disease research. The next one says, wanting to compare Imperial medical postgrad courses. Okay, I think you can, on the website, you can compare individual courses on their sort of general characteristics. So I would suggest you go there. I don't think we've got time in this session to go over lots of different courses, unfortunately. The next one is, what topics does Imperial focus on in the molecular basis of human disease stream? This is not what we're covering in this particular session, unfortunately. If you do have questions about that MBHD stream, which is one of the 8 streams on the MRes, I would suggest you email the lead of that stream, which is Dr. Harry Lowe. You can find his address on the website. The next question is how to analyze big data for biomedical sciences and health. Well, that's what we teach you in the data science stream and also in the epidemiology stream, of course. So we'll be using lots of different machine learning, AI, statistical models, for instance. Again, we don't really have time to go into great detail here, but just to suffice it to say that a variety of different methods from the areas of machine learning, statistics, and AI. The next one is, I'm very interested in a PhD program offered by the college, particularly in infectious diseases. I'm looking for assistance. I'm not quite sure what they mean by assistance. It may relate to scholarships and funding. If so, I think we've covered that. As Lucy said, there are PhD studentships already advertised on the Department of Infectious Diseases website. The next one is, is the program suitable if I want to do research in statistical bioinformatics, particularly in the spatial genomics area? Absolutely, yes. We have genomics facility in our own department, in fact, which is beginning to do a lot of spatial genomics, and that is a particular area that they're willing to, or they're wanting to develop bioinformatics packages and bioinformatics skills in. So they and other people that they collaborate with will probably be offering projects in spatial genomics. So there's both a facility, sort of high throughput genomic facility, but also many different research groups who are using that approach. So definitely that's a relevant area. Next one is use of GIS in biomedical research. I believe that means geographical information systems, which I presume relates to the epidemiology side. So I don't know if one of the epidemiology team would like to take that one. Lucy, Isabel, anything to do with GIS?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, you can do research using GIS. There's many infectious diseases where you can make use of GIS databases to understand the spatial spread. So there's scope for that.
Excellent. Okay, and the next one is essentially, how do we choose our projects? So that's a very common question, so it's good that we can cover it here. Again, essentially, we produce a very long list of projects. There were about 240 separate projects in the latest list that was distributed. You can choose from that. We send it out at the beginning of September, and if you're joining us at the beginning of the program in October, you can contact supervisors from that list beforehand, and we allocate students to projects during that first couple of weeks of October, and we do that based on student preferences. So you tell us which projects you would like, and then we try to work out who can get which project, because obviously some projects get chosen by more than one person. The other option is also that we do allow students to build their own projects, so they can go to a group leader, an academic, and ask them if they could put a project together on an area of mutual interest. And if that is the case and the academic's willing to supervise you, we're perfectly happy to for that to happen. So it's very, very flexible, and there's a very wide range of choice of different projects. Next one is, how can we be part of ongoing research? Short answer is join this course, because that is exactly what it's about. Next one is, I am looking for doctorate courses in epidemiology. I think we've covered that one again. Next one is, I'm interested in a PhD program offered by the college, particularly infectious diseases. I'm looking for assistance, and I think we've covered that. How to present outbreak investigation report and manuscript. That is exactly what we would be teaching you if you were working on outbreaks, for instance. You would be presenting your research as a report, which would be for one of those projects in the style of a manuscript for a journal. Right. Now, I just wanted to make sure we got onto this last section in the last 5 minutes. We started about 5 minutes late, so I think we'll finish at 5 past the hour. This is about next destinations after the MRes, and we did have our 2 or 3 alumni talk to you a little bit about where they've gone on to. And as Yoram mentioned, for the data science stream, we will have this biomedical data science seminar given by 2 of our previous alumni who've gone on to commercial world to apply their data science skills. But let's go through these questions briefly. I'd like to get a job in industry after graduating instead of pursuing a PhD. Will this course help? Absolutely, yes. We do have a lot of people going on to PhDs, but we also have a lot of people going on to industry, especially from the data science stream, in fact. So I think it'll set you up with research skills, soft skills, organizational skills, project management, for instance, which will definitely help in a non-academic next destination. Again, I don't know if any of the students who are on the call or other academics would like to add anything about that.
We put a few things in the chat as well, so people want to look at where some of the students from the epidemiology and the data science stream have gone before, specific companies as well. Sorry, Lucy, I just saw you unmuted as well.
I was just going to say the same thing, and yeah, I think we've had people go to the pharmaceutical industry and, for example, life insurance. So there's quite a lot of industries that are relevant for epidemiology. Yeah.
So there's a wide variety of different things. I think the next question is a general one about career prospects. And as I say, over the years, many students have gone on to a PhD, but after that, they've gone into non-academic careers as well. And then the ones who haven't gone straight onto a PhD have done many different things, depending on the stream that they started with. So there's a real variety of different jobs that people have gone on to. I think that covers a little bit the next one. It also asks about networking opportunities. And I just want to emphasize that we do have some relationships to external organizations. And in particular, we have a relationship with a couple of pharmaceutical companies, AstraZeneca and MSD, that's Merck. And they do offer research projects on the programs. So you're able to collaborate with scientists from pharmaceutical industry. And if that's something that you'd be interested in terms of networking, then obviously it really helps as a way in to see what's going on in that industry. We also have some careers events during the program where we try to connect you with previous alumni, just like we're doing here, but not just alumni who have gone on to the academic route, but also people who've gone on to other areas. The next question is funding opportunities for international students post-graduation. That's at least in my understanding really relates to PhD study. So after you finish the MRes, if you go on to study further for PhD, then we're talking about international student funding for PhDs. There is some. Imperial offers something called the President's Scholarship, which is open to everybody irrespective of your country of origin. And there are some other schemes that fund international students. So I would, if you're interested in that, encourage you to look at the scholarships page on Imperial's website.
Tim, can we ask Yuji to just talk about how she got her pre-doctoral fellowship during the master's, which she's doing now? Judy, how did you go about doing that during the MRes?
Yeah, right. So during the MRes, I actually submitted some PhD application, and during the interview, I was told that even if my application is not successful at this time, I can prepare for an HR pre-doctoral fellowship. So it is kind of 1 year or 1 year full-time or 2 year part-time fellowship that you can do if you are interested in clinical trial bioinformatics. They have a list of host organization and their current research areas that you can contact them and see if they can host you. So during the MRes, I basically, when I applied to the NIHR pre-doctoral fellowship, I explained my current experience in the research and make myself a competitive candidate to this fellowship because I have research experience. I have done these 2 research projects, and I also have a lot of experience in the programming. So I present them that I am a suitable candidate for them, and this is where I got in. So if you are interested in the PhD, but also want to look at the opportunity of pre-doctoral fellowship to better prepare yourself in the doctor application, you can definitely look into the NIHR pre-doctoral fellowship. It's kind of, you can apply like twice a year. Yeah, something like that.
Great, thanks, Yuji. That's something that I think you might be the first person I'm aware of to have gone on to that specific route. So it's really useful to know what's available there. Okay, and the last few questions here. One person's asking about approaches to the pharmaceutical industry and would the degree help? And hopefully I kind of answered that before about talking about AstraZeneca and Merck that we do have a relationship with. Possible to do projects with those. But also other projects that will be offered often may have a pharmaceutical angle on them. So projects in the areas of drug design, for instance, or drug toxicology, for instance. So there's often a pharmaceutical angle, if not an actual collaboration from the supervisor themselves. So there are many opportunities related to the pharma industry related to these different projects. Last one here is, will the open day be recorded? And yes, we are recording. And the last one is about accommodation for international students. Again, perhaps, I don't know if Yuji or Valentina or Lanre would have anything to say about the accommodation options for international students.
I think there is grad, so if it is within the college, I think there is grad path, that is like for postgraduate students, and I think they have like 2 centers. One is in White City, which is actually very close to Hammersmith campus, and I think the other one is probably around Clapham, which is a bit farther, but still like reachable, I think, to White City. Otherwise, I mean, I went for private accommodation because it was a bit cheaper, I guess, for me. But it takes a lot of time to find. So there are a bit like the advantage of going to like student accommodation at Imperial is that you can see it online, book it online, and view it. It's like very kind of quick and comfortable in that sense. But private accommodation instead, it's like a bit more effort. Like you really need to see the flat, and it takes a lot more. I think a bit more investment. I don't know if others something to add.
Is that anything else to add, Yuji or Orlando?
Right. So I actually stayed in the grad pad, White City campus. It is very close, just 10 minutes walk to Hammersmith campus. I really like it. And so after you receive the offer from MRes Biomedical Research, for example, I actually received the email of the accommodation information 1 month after I received the offer from the Imperial College. So they have a lot of information on that email, and especially the link to book the grad pad student studio. So yeah, very convenient.
Great, thanks. Very useful to have information from people who've actually stayed in these places. Okay, so I think we should draw it to a close. We're already a few minutes over. So apologies for any problems joining the call, but hopefully those of you that are on it managed to get something useful, and the recording will be available to everybody that registered. So hopefully a lot of people will get information that way. So are there any final questions or comments before we finish? All right. Well, I'd just like to thank all the staff and the previous students who joined. Really, really helpful. Thanks. And don't worry, we will get the message out and the recording out to a lot more people than were actually on the call live. So thanks to everybody. Thanks for all the potential applicants that joined. And if you have more questions, feel free to email. Our details are on the website. And we wish you a lot of luck with your applications. Okay. Bye-bye for now.